Parker Schnabel just uncovered what may be the biggest hidden jackpot in Alaskan history. An $84 million gold cache buried beneath a collapsed mine sealed for decades. But what they found down there wasn't just gold. Like and subscribe now, because this is the discovery they never wanted you to see. The message came through an unlisted satellite phone. No return number, just a grainy audio file of an old man's voice. Black Echo Ridge is real. You want gold? It's still there? But don't follow the shaft. Follow the tremor. Most would call it a prank, but Parker had heard whispers about that place before. A collapsed drift mine, hidden deep in Alaska's northern range. Officially sealed since 1954 after a supposed methane explosion killed 9 men. Unofficially? Locals say the crew found something they were never meant to, and someone made sure it stayed buried. Satellite imaging showed nothing, until Parker ordered thermal overlays and LiDAR scans. That's when the data lit up. Deep underground, strange anomalies. Dense formations locked beneath layers of permafrost. Too symmetrical to be natural. Even stranger? After requesting mining records from Juneau, half the archives for that region vanished from the system overnight. Parker didn't hesitate. He mobilized his Yukon crew, loading high-altitude choppers with seismic gear, excavation rigs, and deep-core drills. They flew out at dawn, landing on a fractured wind-torn plateau where the mine once stood. Snow blasted sideways. Visibility near zero. The ground beneath their boots didn't feel stable. The original shaft was gone, buried under 6 feet of glacier runoff and landslide rubble. It took 2 days of delicate excavation just to reach a recognizable access point. But what they unearthed during the dig wasn't just rock. Frozen into the ice were rusted tools, a cracked helmet, and bones, human, curled beside an old gas lantern still clutched in frostbitten fingers. Whoever died here didn't die instantly. As they breached the entry slope, Parker had the team map the underground. What appeared was far more than a drift mine. It was a collapsed honeycomb of false walls, sealed tunnels, and ghost chambers untouched for over 70 years. Most of it unregistered. No maps, no schematics, just raw danger. Thermal imaging lit up irregular heat signatures buried behind the rubble. Micro-drones revealed glimpses of caverns where no light had entered since Eisenhower was in office. One chamber showed signs of mineral fusion. Molten material cooled mid-collapse. Parker stared at the readings. There's something down there, and it's not just ore. They drilled for 14 hours. Just past midnight, a tremor hit. Subtle at first, but it cracked open a vertical shaft leading deeper underground. The air was thick, musty, and carried the unmistakable scent of mercury and age. The chamber it opened into was like a time capsule. Rail carts frozen mid-track, mercury-stained pans, timber shelves warped from decades of compression. And at the far wall, partially buried under frost and dust, was a metal chest, fused to the rock by time and ice. No one touched it. Not yet. But the real shock came behind the chamber wall. A collapsed section showed signs of reinforcement. Rebar, concrete, blast shielding. Someone had tried to hide what was behind it. Parker ordered the rubble cleared by hand. What emerged was beyond belief. An unnatural wall of gold. Not nuggets, not dust, bars. Dozens of them. Half melted, fused directly into the cavern's stone, as if something molten had once flooded through and flash-cooled mid-collapse. They weren't looking at a gold vein. They were staring at a sealed deposit, like someone tried to entomb it forever. Then came the pressure warning. One of the gauges spiked. The walls groaned. Readings from seismic monitors lit up in red. Something down there was shifting, and it hadn't moved in decades. Before anyone could act, Parker stepped back from the chaos and opened the weathered satchel they'd recovered near the vault's edge. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a journal, its spine cracked, its pages charred at the edges. Parker flipped through the brittle pages, each one crumbling slightly at the corners, blackened by time and humidity. The handwriting, frantic and jagged, belonged to a foreman named Curtis Hale, dated July 1953, barely a year before the collapse that sealed this mine forever. The entries started cleanly: notes on tunnel lengths, ore output, seismic activity. But halfway through, the tone changed. They had struck what Hale called a liquid vein, not just a rich deposit, a flow of molten gold that oozed into a hollowed chamber and cooled into twisted arcs and globs. He described it as alive, moving, reacting. They'd tried to mine it, but their tools melted. He recorded burns without flame. Then came hallucinations, miners reporting whispers from the stone, shadowed figures in peripheral vision, eyes reflecting back in total darkness. Hale spoke of a breathing wall in the lower chamber, stone that moved subtly when no one was watching. The last page ended mid-sentence, ink smudged by blood or water. "We sealed it. God forgive us." Parker handed the journal to his geologist, who scanned it while recalibrating the spectrometer. The preliminary readings were off the charts. The fused vein behind the chamber wall, if it could be safely removed, contained trace gold worth over $84 million, maybe more depending on purity. But the structure around it was dangerously unstable. Vibrations had increased, and instruments were starting to fail. The light drones blinked out one by one. Radios crackled. GPS triangulation vanished inside the shaft. EM interference surged in pulses, as if the mine itself was emitting energy. Parker's tech guys suggested a collapsed geothermal vent or magnetic distortion from the ore concentration, but the readings didn't match anything in recorded geology. And then the floor shifted, not a tremor, a slow exhale. The ground beneath their boots swelled and settled, groaning deep through the bedrock. Parker felt it in his chest. There wasn't time to wait. He issued a hard shift in strategy, a full bypass operation through an upper adit, hoping to relieve the pressure building beneath the dome. The crew worked in rotating 4-hour shifts, cutting upward to bleed stress fractures, but the heat increased with every foot of depth. Heavy drill heads glowed red, cooling tanks emptied faster than they could be refilled. Sleep became optional. Every breath felt shorter. Oxygen thinned as methane pockets flared unexpectedly. No one could explain the creeping headaches or vertigo. It wasn't altitude. Something was pressing in from all sides, a kind of spatial nausea, like the mine didn't want them there. On day 3, one of the younger miners, Ryan, was pinned in a sudden partial collapse. He emerged with a cracked rib and a 1,000-yard stare. Parker knelt beside him during triage. Ryan whispered, "There's a tunnel down there. Not rock. Like glass. Walls smooth like obsidian. Carvings I couldn't read. I think someone built it." Parker didn't want to believe it, but the maps backed him up. A secondary tunnel, curved unnaturally, ran beneath the primary shaft. It wasn't part of the original mine. No blasting residue, no timber braces. It was something else. Faced with a hard choice, secure the exposed gold or explore the newly revealed passage, Parker made the call. Greed and curiosity were now inseparable. He sent a scout team into the breach, 3 of his most experienced men, carrying infrared cameras, air samplers, gas masks, climbing rigs. The rope feed extended 300 feet straight down before the signal began to degrade. They were in the hollow spine of the earth. The footage returned in jagged frames, grainy but legible. The team entered a chamber network unlike anything on record. The architecture, if it could be called that, seemed carved, not blasted. Smooth angles, symmetry, even spacing. The stone was black and glassy. Volcanic maybe, but too cold, too polished, and the light reflected strangely, like it was bending. In the largest room, the floor was partially collapsed, but just beyond that, they found a mound of irregular nuggets, some melted, some perfectly cast. Like icons or ritual objects, one resembled a figure with wings, another had embedded lines like a circuit board. The gold here wasn't just raw, it had been shaped. Then came the inscription, chiseled into an arch. Fortune mined from hell must return to it. No one spoke. The audio on the tape hissed and clicked. One of the team stepped toward the pile, his boots scuffing loose gravel. The ground pulsed. Beneath the gold, a thin pit of quicksilver stirred, as if reacting to sound or motion. It sloshed unnaturally slow, viscous and glimmering, glowing faintly from within. Every meter of equipment lit up in red. Batteries drained in seconds. One man vomited, another stumbled into the wall and screamed. Parker's voice came over the comms, shaky, quiet, final. Pull back, no more digging, we've gone too deep. The tunnel answered with a sigh. The walls shimmered, something beneath the mercury moved, and behind the carved stones, the mountain started breathing again. They should have left. Everyone knew it. But silence fell across the radios the next morning. The withdrawal order hadn't been logged. One loader operator, Chase, claimed Parker told him to go in. Parker swore he hadn't. Either way, the machines were moving again. The loader clawed through the fused crust like a surgeon tearing scar tissue. It wasn't pretty. Metal screamed against quartz. Sparks flared as the machine carved through the unnatural dome that had cocooned the vein for nearly 70 years. They pulled out over 3,000 ounces of high-density gold in the first pass, some pieces shearing clean, others slumping like they'd been half-melted and flash-frozen mid-pour. The cavern responded in kind. As the last slab cleared the crust, the walls moaned, not the creak of shifting rock, a guttural, reverberating groan echoing through the adits like something exhaling in warning. Several of the extracted bars triggered anomalies. Parker's field meter flagged magnetic flux on a handful of them, even though gold isn't supposed to hold a magnetic field. One crewman swore a bar shifted on its own while he strapped it into the crate. The cameras caught nothing. Infrared turned useless, whitewashed by thermal scatter from the vein's core. The light didn't bounce off it. It bent, folded back like heat waves on tarmac, only worse. Then things got worse. Derek, Parker's foreman, was helping secure the second crate when he collapsed. Straight down, no warning. Eyes rolled back. No pulse. Crew went into panic mode. They pulled his helmet off and started CPR. For almost 90 seconds, he was flatlined. Then, without defib, he gasped like someone breaking the surface of deep water. But when he sat up, he didn't recognize anyone. No memory, no name, the medic muttered, like something short-circuited his brain. They got him stable, but the crew was shaken. Parker wanted to pull the plug right then, seal the shaft, evac the team, and write the loss off. But greed doesn't play by rational rules. There was still one more piece, buried deeper, wedged into the center of the fused dome. The scan showed a core nugget, nearly 3 feet long, shaped like a collapsed pillar, with density off the charts. Estimated value, $2.3 million, possibly more depending on purity. Parker hesitated for 6 long minutes. The seismic monitors pulsed. Dust rained from the ceiling. Finally, he gave the order. One last haul. The crew rigged a dual crane system with reinforced cables. The nugget resisted. The quartz around it fractured, like old bone. When it lifted free, the pulleys groaned under the weight, so dense it nearly shattered the rig despite counterbalancing. That's when the second shock came. Beneath where the core nugget had rested, embedded in the foundation stone, was a sealed hatch, stone-rimmed, iron-inlaid, centuries old. Carved in English block script, it read, "Property of Tanhoiser Syndicate, 1912." everyone froze. The name hadn't been spoken aloud in decades. The Tanhoiser Syndicate, an old-world conglomerate whispered about in Arctic exploration circles, was supposedly disbanded in the 1940s after multiple cargo ships disappeared hauling extraction equipment to northern Canada. No one ever found the wrecks. No one found the gold. Just stories. Parker called in his engineer, who scanned the hatch and the surrounding rock. The metal wasn't iron exactly, more like a tungsten alloy blend with radiation-shielding properties. The stone above the hatch didn't match local geology. According to analysis, it had drifted, carried here by glacial pressure from a volcanic zone hundreds of miles south, except there were no volcanoes in that direction. The gold, he said, was older than the mine itself, possibly older than the mountain. They didn't open it. Not yet. The crew tagged the coordinates, sealed the shaft, and left the hatch untouched. It wasn't fear, it was instinct. Some things shouldn't be touched, not without understanding what's beneath. Extraction protocols shifted into high gear. Parker ordered the entire haul flown out in cryogenic-grade sealed containers, citing instability and contamination risk. The weight was distributed across 3 flights, one to a Yukon refinery, one to Anchorage, and one to a private vault facility under Parker's name. The first red flag came when the Anchorage refinery refused to accept the bars. Their scanners showed structural anomalies, veins inside the gold that weren't consistent with natural formation. They used terms like synthetic lattice and unknown embedment. A second refinery flat out rejected the delivery. Too unstable, the report read, may be contaminated. Then came the black helicopter, unmarked, military grade. It showed up uninvited, hovering into Parker's base camp without clearance, without ID. 2 men stepped out. Badges flashed so fast no one caught them. One carried a radiation dosimeter. The other asked about the footage, the journal, and whether any items of unknown alloy had been recovered. They took soil samples, air samples, and 3 of Parker's data drives. No explanations were given. Cease operations, one agent said. Immediate non-disclosure applies under Section 12.5 of the Resource Containment Act. That act doesn't exist, at least not on paper. They left without another word. Parker's team tried to send one of the bars to MIT for materials testing under a research alias. The bar disappeared en route. A week later, the lab sent back a single line: trace isotopes inconsistent with terrestrial formation. Further inquiry not recommended. The 16mm reel, the one labeled Claim 27, Final Load, was gone too. Parker's archivist swore she backed it up, but every copy failed to load. Files corrupted, originals missing. Even the crew who saw it remembered it differently. Some claimed it showed a melt sequence. Others remembered a man screaming beside a gold vent. One person remembered nothing at all. No one talked openly now, not even Parker. The only thing they all agreed on was this: whatever they had pulled out of Black Echo Ridge was never supposed to see the light of day. Then the Earth began to whisper. The tremors started 3 days after the final flight left the ridge. Not big enough to make headlines, just microquakes, ripple pulses that registered on backcountry seismic monitors and cracked old permafrost like hairline fractures in glass. But the damage was real. A dormant ice vent near Aklavik, inactive for over 1,000 years, collapsed, releasing a column of supercooled steam that hissed for 6 hours straight. No known geothermal activity in the area. No warning. And then came the stories. Word spread fast through the Gwich'in and Inuvialuit communities. Not warnings, prophecies. Elders spoke of a place their ancestors called Si Tuk Arain, the breathing cave, a wound in the earth that once opened, then closed after a blood sacrifice was made. They said it had awakened, that someone had disturbed the seal. They didn't name Parker, but they didn't have to. He heard it from 3 separate villages. The same phrasing, the same warning. The crew didn't need superstition to confirm what they already felt. Nightmares, every one of them. Recurring, synchronized dreams of tunnels that twisted back into themselves. Of gold dripping from walls like oil. Of standing before a hatch that hummed like a heartbeat. Nosebleeds became common. Ryan collapsed during a routine delivery run. Hospital scans showed acute metal toxicity as if he'd ingested gold. But he hadn't touched any since returning. Derek, the foreman who flatlined, he stopped speaking altogether. Communicates only with gestures now. Refuses to fly. Refuses to sleep indoors. The medical reports went nowhere. The toxicology results were inconclusive. No one wanted to go on record. Every institution that tested the gold either denied receipt or claimed contamination protocols required immediate disposal. Online rumors exploded. Parker Schnabel opened a vault never meant to be opened. Black Echo Ridge is real, and it's breathing. And still, the core nugget remains untouched, sealed in a cryo-cooled vault beneath an anonymous holding facility Parker had built years ago in the Yukon. $84 million by weight. Triple that in speculative value if it's ever allowed to hit open markets. But no one's buying it. No one dares smelt it. Parker won't even look at it. He planned to go back in spring. Quietly. Minimal crew. Just to investigate the hatch. To see what lay beneath. Those plans died overnight. A legal injunction appeared out of nowhere. Dated decades ago. Filed by a mining firm dissolved in 1976, but somehow marked as active by a federal judge. The claim? Intellectual property violation and site interference. At the same time, Parker's equipment, rigs, drills, even storage crates, was flagged in an international resource enforcement database as federal asset interference. He couldn't ship, couldn't fly, couldn't even move his own dozers without clearance. Then came the satellite wipe. The coordinates for the site? Gone. Google Earth, no AA, even private survey databases, all now showed a geological sinkhole, no records, no visible access road. It was like the mine had never existed. Then came the worst of it. Mason, one of Parker's drone specialists, had taken a break, flew out to Anchorage for a short solo trip, then chartered a bush plane up north. Told no one. His last text pinged off a tower near the ridge. He never came back. No wreckage, no beacon, just gone. Parker didn't post about it, didn't even tell the network. But in his handwritten journal, on the page dated June 7th, he left a single line. Some gold you don't own. It owns you. The footage that eventually made it to the public was stripped bare, chopped into segments with missing timestamps, muffled audio, and blurred edges like the lens had fogged over or degraded. No hatch, no seismic events, no mention of the Tanhoiser engraving. What aired on television was a shell of what really happened. A shallow cut of gloved hands pulling fused bars from a cave. B-roll footage of Parker nodding silently. A few sound bites about the most intense haul of my career. Nothing else. But that wasn't the end. The forums blew up. Reddit threads tracked missing timestamps, corrupted frames, whistleblower claims from a sound tech who said the raw footage made his nose bleed. Conspiracy YouTubers tied the hatch to Cold War psychic weaponry programs, Arctic fallout vaults, even deep Earth terraforming experiments. A few theorized Parker had stumbled onto a post-war Nazi artifact site. Others said it was an ancient prison, and the hatch was the lock. None of it could be proven. And yet, Parker's operation posted the highest yield in gold rush history that quarter. Over $100 million recovered, though less than half was ever traced to official channels. The rest? Still locked away. unprocessed, unmelted, unclaimed. Insiders say he won't speak about it. Not in interviews, not to producers, not even to crew. The remaining gold, close to 40% of the total, hasn't moved from its cold vault since extraction. No one's authorized to test it. Parker won't even have it insured. When asked during a closed Q&A if he plans to revisit Black Echo Ridge, he left the room without answering. The final image from the last unmanned drone, before the signal was lost, shows the upper ridge, ice cracking, snow collapsing into the old shaft mouth, and something underneath, a faint glow through the frost, pulsing slow and steady like breath. The hatch is still there, still sealed, still waiting. If this dig really unearthed more than just gold, what else lies sealed beneath Alaska's forgotten mines? Hit like if you're still trying to wrap your head around what Parker's team might have awakened. And subscribe if you want to follow every hidden chamber, lost journal, and forbidden vault they uncover next.